Bhuteshu Natsyatsu Na Vanishyati. This translation. Yet there is another unmanifest nature, which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. And then the next verse is Avyaktakshar ityaktas tamaho paramam gatim yam prapyanani vartante tadama paramam mama. Let me try to repeat it. Avyaktakshara ityaktas tamahu paramam gatim yam prapyanani vartante tadama paramam mama. Avyaktakshara ityaktas tamahu paramam gatim yam prapyanani vartante tadama paramam mama. Avyaktakshara ityaktas tamahu paramam gatim yam prapyanani vartante tadama paramam mama. Anyone want to try the Sanskrit reading? Avyaktakshara ityaktas tamahu paramam gatim yam prapyanani vartante tadama paramam mama. That which the Vedantists describe as unmanifest and infallible, that which is known as the supreme destination, that place from which, having attained it, one never returns, that is my supreme abode. The supreme abode of the personality of Godhead Krishna is described in the Brahma Samhita as Chintamani Dhama, a place where all desires are fulfilled. The supreme abode of Lord Krishna, known as Goloka Vrindavan, is full of palaces made of touchstone. There are also trees called desire trees that supply all types of eatable upon demand. And there are cows known as the Surabhi cows, which supply a limitless supply of milk. In this abode, the Lord is served by hundreds of thousands of goddesses of fortunes, Lakshmis, and he is called Govinda, the primal Lord and the cause of all causes. The Lord is accustomed to blow his flute, Venam Kanvantam. His transcendental form is the most attractive in all the worlds. His eyes are like lotus petals, and the color of his body is the color of clouds. He is so attractive that his beauty excels that of thousands of cupids. He wears saffron cloth, a garland around his neck, and a peacock feather in his hair. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna gives only a small hint of his personal abode, Goloka Vrindavan, which is the supreme planet in the spiritual kingdom. A vivid description is given in the Brahma Samhita. Vedic literatures, the Katha Upanishad 131, 11, state that there is nothing superior to the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that abode is the ultimate destination. Purusham na param kinchit sa kasta paramam vati. When one attains to it, he never returns to the material world. Krishna's supreme abode and Krishna himself are non-different, being of the same quality. On this earth, or same quality, on this earth, Vrindavan, 90 miles southeast of Delhi, is a replica of that supreme Goloka Vrindavan, located in the spiritual sky. When Krishna descended on this earth, he sported on that particular tract of land known as Vrindavan, comprising about 168 square miles in the district of Mathura, India. And we'll read the last verse. Anyone like to read that?
The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is greater than all, is attainable by unalloyed devotion. Although he is present in his abode, he is all pervading and everything is situated within him. Purport. It is here clearly stated that the supreme destination, from which there is no return, is the abode of Krishna, the Supreme Person. The Brahma Samhita describes this supreme abode as Ananda Chinnama Rasa, a place where everything is full of spiritual bliss. All the variegatedness manifest there. There is of the quality of spiritual bliss. Nothing there is material. That variegatedness is expanded as the spiritual expansion of the Supreme Godhead Himself. For the manifestation, there is totally of the spiritual energy as explained in chapter 7. As far as this material world is concerned, although the Lord is always in his supreme abode, he is nonetheless all pervading by his material energy. So by his spiritual and material energies, he is present everywhere, both in the material and in the spiritual universe. Yashanata Sthani means that everything is sustained within him, within either his spiritual or material energy. The Lord is all pervading by these two energies. To enter Krishna's supreme abode or innumerable Vaikuntha planets is possible only by bhakti, devotional service, as clearly indicated here by the word bhaktya. No other process can help one attain that supreme abode. The Vedas also describes the supreme abode and supreme personality of Godhead. Eko Vasi Sarva Krishna. In that abode there is only one supreme personality of Godhead, whose name is Krishna. He is the supreme merciful deity, and although situated there as one, he has expanded himself into millions and millions of plenary expansions. The Vedas compared the Lord to a tree standing still, yet bearing many varieties of fruits, flowers, and changing leaves. The plenary expansions of Lord who preside over the Vaikuntha planets are four armed, and they are known by a variety of names: Purushottama, Trivikrama, Keshava, Madhava, Aniruddha, Harikesha, Sankarsarana, Pradyumna, Sridhara, Vasudeva, Damodara, Janardana, Narayana, Vamna, Padmanabha, etc. The Brahma Samiti also confirms that Samhita also confirms that although the Lord is always in the supreme abode, Goloka, Vrindavan, he is all pervading so that everything is going so on nicely. As stated in Vedas, Prayasa Saktir Vividhaiva Suryavate Sabhvari Janana Bala Kriyacha. His energies are so extensive that they systematically conduct everything in the cosmic manifestation without a flaw, although the Supreme Lord is far, far away.
Thank you, John. So let's start off with a question. The question is actually from last week. Does anyone remember what was being described last week?
We were talking about how distinguish about mind and consciousness.
Yes, it's 4 different states of consciousness. Yeah, the chitta, the mind, the intelligence, and the ahankara. Yeah, that's really nice. And in the Bhagavad Gita, there was a reference to one particular demigod. Does anyone remember which one was mentioned? He has a particularly long day. Or Brahma, yes. Yeah. And they were talking about the length of his lifetime. Anyone remember what it was?
A lot.
A lot. it was actually 311 trillion years. And also it was explained that that's only one universe, whereas Mahavishnu, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, no, Mahavishnu is continued in one of his breaths. There are millions of universes. So it was explained to us a particularly long stretch of time, and yet it seemed to explain as well that was only, in comparison to eternity, it's like one spot in eternity. So now you have Krishna starting to explain about the other nature, which is the spiritual nature. And the interesting thing about this is that this is one of the only places in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna really talks about his abode. He talks about other things. He talks about the material world, like the three modes of nature, time, karma, various things like that, and the four orders in life and stuff like that. He talks about the demigods. He talks about we're not this body, we're the soul. But just this is one of the only places where he talks about the spiritual nature. And but in the purport, Prabhupada references some other book which is about the spiritual nature. Does anyone remember what that book was? That we wrote. That was right. It was again more Brahma, called the Brahma Samhita. Yes. And how many verses of that book are still existent? How many chapters? There's only one chapter, and it's chapter 5. And it was discovered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he forget the name of the place where he went, but he discovered it in one of the monasteries. What was it?
South India. That's all of that. It was South India.
Yes, it was South India. Yeah. When he was doing his tour of South India, he stopped off in one temple, and he found an existent copy of this book, and that describes very, very powerfully the spiritual world and the material world, and describes how it took place, how did the material world come into being, and that was God Himself, explaining this. Another interesting factor is that although there is many scientific descriptions about the origin of the species, of how we can understand life, and how we can come, and brings it down into molecules and various things to try to discover what is life. And none of them even come close to the descriptions that are in the Vedas. I mean, those descriptions are in the Vedic scriptures as well. Like the 1/10,000th part of the tip of the hair is like the measurement of the soul. And there's also the subatomic particles are mentioned in the Vedas, which were written down thousands of years ago. But the Vedas give a much vaster description of the whole universal systems, and it gives it with such accuracy as well, such fine-tunedness. And this is one of the things we talked about last week, is that, and one of the reasons we talked about the 311 trillion years, is that the soul, the living entity, is eternal, and but he's covered in this world by four things. He's covered mainly by the ahankar, which is the false ego, false sense of I, and the accumulation of the living entity's karma for being in this world for such a long time is stored in what's called the chitta. All the experiences that we've had ever, is still stored there in the chitta. It's a very subtle element, but it's more fine than the false ego, the mind, the intelligence. And the whole process of Krishna consciousness is to cleanse that chitta of all those different impressions from millions of lifetimes. And we do that by chanting Hare Krishna. That's why this method, which is brought in by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is the best method for this age. And it gives the quickest result. Previously, people would go to the Himalayas and they would meditate and try to, take in the whole cosmic atmosphere. And in fact, some of them were quite successful because they were able to clear the chitta. That's what they're doing when they're up there. They're actually clearing the chitta through breath control, through mind control, all these different ways in which they're trying to clear that chitta. Because when they do that, then the secrets of the universe actually will then appear, because the living entity is part of this universe. And then those actual secrets, what we've always wanted, why am I here? What am I doing here? What's the goal of life? Those type of questions and so on can be answered that way, because the actual soul is clear, has a clear vision of what's actually happening. Isn't that a nice thing to get? A clear vision, actually, the reality of the world in which we're living. So that's available in the chanting as well, and that's why we chant as much as we can. Chaitodharmana Marjan, what it does is it clears all the dust that is accumulated for many lifetimes. And the soul is located in the heart, and the soul has, it has so many neurons which it works with the brain, and the soul, the heart has, much more going to the brain than the other way around. The actual firings of the neurons going on. This is kind of medical science that's being proven now. Because that's where the activity of the soul is. So that's what we're trying to achieve in Krishna consciousness. That's why we hear descriptions of the spiritual world then. And that's what we've just had in those last 3 verses. So we were describing how the material world is so vast, there's so many different things going on here. But then Krishna then starts to, it's amazing the way he said it, it's very, very poetical. Where am I? 29. So poetical. How did I get here? Parastasta vibhavana yakto yaktat sanatana yaksak sarveshu bhutishu nasyachuna vinishati. And then avyaktoksha ityoktas tamahu paramam gatim yapraprana nivartante tadama paramam mama. So in that sense, Krishna is explaining these things to us. It's like after explaining all the material things to us, suddenly he gives us a little glimpse that the spiritual world is like this. And at the very end of this book, the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, give up all varieties of religion and just surrender. And that's where the Srimad Bhagavatam starts. The Srimad Bhagavatam? Has everybody heard of the Srimad Bhagavatam? Yeah, the Srimad Bhagavatam starts there at that point. And anyone who distributes or gets a Srimad Bhagavatam on the Bhadra Purnim it says that is guaranteed to go back to the spiritual world. Does anyone know what the Bhadra Purnim is? This next Sunday. So you'll have a great opportunity to get a Bhagavatam set. So we already have.
This Sunday coming?
Yeah.
Oh.
Around the world we distributed, I don't know how many, but literally tens of thousands of Bhagavatams in this mood, just because of the Bhadra Purnim. And but that's where the descriptions of the spiritual world start to really manifest, and they culminate in the 10th canto, which is descriptions of Krishna. But it leads all the way up to Krishna. The first 9 cantos are explaining about what was described here, which is Krishna's expansions. Because it's not that Krishna is some kind of selfish person. This is his nature. Everything is manifesting from Krishna. And there's certain different types of manifestations. There are manifestations which are called Svangsa and Vivinangsa, I think they're called. or Svavas, and what's the, I can't remember what the second one is. But basically, the actual incarnations of Krishna are like a candle, you know, and it's another candle lit off that candle. So they all have the power of Krishna. They all have the power of God, you know. All the like the expansions, Lord Narayan, you know, Vishnu. There's so many different expansions. They all have the power, but they only. I'll give you an example. See the light up here. There's a certain amount of electricity there. The whole electrical agency is there, but it's only manifesting in that small bulb. But you could say that, you know, Crow Park and the evening football match, there's big lights. So there's more power, more electricity. It's the same power, but it's just a greater receptacle of that. But all of these different incarnations are, they're called portions or plenary portions. They all have the same power as the original, but they only exemplify a certain amount. You know, they only manifest a certain amount. But it says in Bhagavatam, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the full expansion of all the powers of God, and that's why we worship Krishna, because it's the Krishna consciousness movement. Because Krishna has appeared as Lord Chaitanya in the 15th century, and he's particularly appeared in Kali Yuga because we have Kali Yuga memories, which means that we don't have the sufficient powers of concentration to meditate in samadhi like that. So, but he came, and what he gave, what no other incarnation gave, and this is why it's specifically a powerful time to be around, is that he just gave out love of God. And as it was explained in the 22nd verse there, that bhakti is what love of God is. It's devotional service. And that's how we can manifest Krishna in our hearts, is through this service. And this is the power of devotional service in our life. And that's why it's so it's very simple, it's made very easy. And when we perform devotional service, we will eventually see Krishna. But in order to see Krishna, Krishna is so vast. Like, can you imagine ourselves trying to see Krishna? It's quite a lot. But Krishna also appears in two forms. He appears as the super soul in the heart, who's giving us guidance within, you know, and then he appears as the spiritual master as well. So there's two ways. Is the spiritual master from without, and the super soul from within. And that's why it becomes easier to perform devotional service. The prime example is Srila Prabhupada. He got this instruction from his spiritual master that if he ever gets money to print books, and boy did he print books. He's printed 500 million books, 500 million in existence, more now at this point. So that was taking the order of the spiritual master seriously. But Krishna appears in the order of the spiritual master. So that's why bhakti is the most powerful agency. And in the Krishna consciousness movement, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to perform bhakti to please the spiritual master, and please the acharyas before us. Like some of the things that they would say, they would definitely say would be to hear Bhagavad Gita. And that's an instruction, which is great because, you know, when we hear it, it's very enjoyable, and it's very powerful. And another thing would be to take prasadam, you know, spiritual food. Offer your food first. That video, was it? Patram Pushpan Phalam. Krishna says 518 in the Bhagavad Gita. I think it's 518. Not absolutely sure. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. So that's why we have vegetarian restaurant. It's not just a vegetarian restaurant. It's a prasadamarian restaurant. All the food downstairs is spiritual food. So that actually purifies. In another place in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that if one eats food which is sanctified, then it purifies the brain cells, that the material brain cells become spiritualized. And therefore one gets the potency to think of the Supreme, you know, because they're both there. Like we have the material, one person is thinking, I want to buy this for myself, and I want to buy that for my son, like that for them. You know, they're thinking about how to, you know, the cells are working that way. Whereas the devotee is thinking, I want to do that for my spiritual master. I want to do that to please Krishna. I want to do that. So it's the same ones that are working, but the material becomes spiritualized. So the brain becomes spiritualized by performing spiritual work, and that will that actually magnifies. You know, we actually also get a taste, because just as there's seemingly a taste from sense enjoyment, like if somebody just sees an apple or whatever and just eats it and doesn't offer it to God, so he feels a kind of a satisfaction. But again, that's not very beneficial, you know. But if one takes it and has been offered, first of all, to Krishna, then there's also a spiritual atmosphere, and therefore the consciousness that a person cooks or offers in, you know, if a person is cooking something to offer to God, then you will get that in the prasadam that you're taking, you know. And those who've been in the restaurant know that a lot as well. You know, it's in the you know, in the consciousness. You actually get the consciousness of the person who's cooking. So all of these things are all subtle kind of aspects of bhakti yoga. But one of the things that Prabhupada, you know, following in the instructions of Srila Prabhupada, is to distribute his literature to others, you know, to Krishna conscious literature. And when you do that, you become connected to the source, because like we are actually connected to Krishna ultimately. But when we come into the material world, it's like we pop out of the connection. We're like a spark in the fire, but we kind of pop out of the fire, and therefore we lose our glowing propensity. And it's only when we're back in the fire that we get our you know, our glowingness again. So by doing things for Krishna, for Krishna's devotee, we actually become part again. It's like you could say that's the tree. You know, we're a leaf of the tree, like we're a branch. You know, we're belonging to a branch of the tree. So in that sense, we're getting nourished. But if we get removed from the tree, then we lose that nourishment and we fade away on the ground or whatever. So by performing devotional service, we actually get that energy, you know, and it's a very special energy, and we try to cultivate it as much as we can. Is there any comments, any questions? I'd like to add anything? It doesn't even have to be on the classes, does it?
I got this one about Prashadam. I took it off the altar, that which we give to God.
Oh.
I took it off the altar, that which we accept from God. I took it off the altar. My mouth exploded, what is this, what is this? My mouth exploded, what is this, what is this? An offering to God. I took it off the altar, that which we accept from God. I took it off the altar and experienced divinity. I took it off the altar and tasted spiritual remnants of someone's love and devotion.
Very nice.
Hare Krishna.
It's a poem.
Poem.
By Anthony Tigers.
It was someone else's remnants. It wasn't mine. It's true. It's true. It's true. Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
I have a question. Probably not related to the subject matter, but you mentioned that Krishna is the root of all the incarnation.
Yeah.
What is special about Rama? Like in our Hare Krishna Mahamantra, we have Krishna as well as Lord Ram. Why not any other incarnation of Krishna, like Narasimha or Vishnu in Hare Krishna Mahamantra? Why Rama? What is so special about Sri Ram?
There's a couple of ways as to answer that according to the acharyas. One of the ways is that it's Balaram, not necessarily Lord Ram. That's one way. It's also Ram,
Uh-huh.
and it's also Radha Ramani as well.
Mm.
Krishna's consort. So there's different ways in which that's described. So yeah. So by chanting Ram, you get the benefit of all. So it's all in one. Yeah. But before each is Hare, which is Shrimati Radharani, which is the Vladimir Shakti, the pleasure potency in that sense. So there's Hare Krishna, 4 Hares, Krishna, and 4 Hares and Rama. So Radha is there in all of them, and she's first as well.
Yeah.
Which is you're invoking the mercy of Radharani, because it's even said that even I've heard this described that even the most fallen person, if they once do any service, that Radharani comes before Krishna. Look, this wonderful devotee has done this service. They're a much better devotee than me. She has such incredible levels of humility we can't even fathom. But she also appears, and somebody asked me this today, she also appears to give the mercy as well. Which, and at one point Prabhupada explained that was also distributing books, is also like Radharani is a very intimate service too. So we can't really see the blessings that we get. Sometimes we do things from just an automatic kind of way, and we do it in a sadhana. We do it because we're told it's good, and we don't necessarily always feel it. But it's good to hear it, because when you hear it more, and that's why we're meant to listen to the scriptures and hear the scriptures as much as possible, because it's very enthusing for us to hear about the potencies that are there. Because generally we hear about the other types of things in the world, and they've just got such a low vibration generally. Somebody was killed the other day because this happened, and it's from a material point of view. It's from the lower sphere, and it really does drag us down. It keeps us kind of in that kind of level of existence and level of consciousness. So the idea is to chant as much as possible and to hear as much as possible, because that will keep us in a kind of a protected state, and to associate with devotees as much as possible, because devotees are on that level, and then when devotees come together, they shouldn't talk about material things. They should talk about spiritual things, because then they can keep each other buoyed up. And in the Bhagavad Gita it says that the devotees are always enlightening one another and conversing about them. That's what they do. That's what they spend their time doing. Not, did you hear what she said, and did you hear what they said? Which is called Gramya Kata. Gramya Kata can get into, even a devotional community as such, and can affect it. So we're always on our guard, but that's up to each and every member as well. To keep themselves pretty in ship shape and good. Not like in the gym. Well, like in the gym, but spiritual gym, which is constant press ups, reading Bhagavad Gita, and push-ups, and chanting Hare Krishna. These are the things that are necessary to keep ourselves in the spiritual gym. And then we'll be able to do different things as well, and we'll get confidence in devotional service. To endeavour with confidence, that's one thing. Is there anything else? Any good, nice questions? Yeah.
Thanks. I saw that in Gita they are written about heaven, Kolbin Button, or about hell. So suppose I did a plant of sin in the world.
Yeah.
So after died,
Yeah.
how are we sure that even I saw that our body is getting pain all the time. Even my soul is not getting 1 second rest.
Yeah.
It is changing body to body. So after died, how I will see the karma
Yeah.
and consequences of my life.
Okay.
Did I go for heaven or hell?
Yeah.
So what will go normally for heaven or hell or Golden
Yeah. Well, I say one thing is that the soul, in a sense, doesn't suffer. What suffers mainly is the ahankar, or the false identification with the soul, which is called the false ego. The soul is, you know, the soul is actually by nature full of knowledge, full of bliss, and
it's
eternal.
pure.
Yeah, but the soul is pure. But the problem is that the ego misidentifies with the false ego, with the body, when it goes from body to body and so on. So, but it's not really us, even though it seems as if it is us. But it's the
Our mind, intelligent,
mind
conscious.
intelligence, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
soul will not get any pain, will not suffer.
No. So the whole idea is to control the mind and control this to control the senses and use the intelligence to do spiritual things, and then we'll get to see the soul. You know, I get to experience the soul, and even in this lifetime we can experience the soul, which is what Bhakti Yoga is about. And when you get that experience, you actually become actually happy, and that even in the material world, despite all the things that are going on, you'll actually feel, you know, bliss. You'll feel kind of outside the realm of all these things going on, you know, and you'll kind of communicate with Krishna. You'll get that loving embrace of Krishna, because the soul itself is full of love and wants to love, you know, and wants to be loved by Krishna as well. And Krishna wants us to come back like that. So that's the refuge, you know, in the world is the love of God.
So eventually the soul is suffering, not the body.
No.
Is it?
So not suffering.
Because that's why we are coming back here and there. Isn't it?
But we're not, the soul is because it becomes covered and therefore is not conscious of itself as such. Yeah. So how could that be? How could it be covered and not conscious and still be blissful? That's the nature of the illusion we're in. And it's called the Mahamaya. That's the illusion that we're put under when we choose to try to enjoy separately from God. You know, we're immediately we're covered over by this Maya. But the soul itself ultimately is by nature pure. And it's only when the remembrance, we have to remember, the soul remembers itself. Oh my God, what am I doing here? You know, like that. You know, and that starts to get increase. And then we start to realize our original nature again. I mean, it's been described sometimes like the souls in the spiritual world and things. I wonder what it's like if I'm right there, and it's like a dream. You know, it's like and this is the dream that's going on. It's temporary in that sense, but it's real, but it's temporary. But it's like it's a dream of this, and then the soul reawakens back in the spiritual. Oh my God, that would be horrible, you know. But it goes through all of those things like heaven and hell. What?
Our mind, intelligent, is invisible, but we can't see.
No.
We think that our soul is everything in our body.
Say again?
We think our soul is everything in our body,
Yeah.
the spirit soul. So
Yeah.
it doesn't get punishment. So how I will realize that my mind, arrogant, everything is not visible, but my body is not getting pain after dying. So
Oh, no, your body, you will, or it's your false ego. Like for instance, when the soul it's taken by the mind and the senses and the false ego. It's taken from one body and presented into the next body. That's what happens. It's like they still, whereas the body dies, right?
yeah,
But the subtle body still is there,
yeah.
and the subtle body then brings the soul with it into the next body. So that's still there. So that's where the suffering is still going on there. And then if depending on how one has lived in this life, we will go lower in the species, or we can go higher in the species, depending how we've lived. You know, and that's the chitta is the kind of the accumulation of all that we've done. It's almost like on automatic. You know, from all the things that we're doing now, all the things that we've done previously, it's all dictating what's happening next, what's going to happen next. But we have to intervene in the process. You know, we have to get in there and say, hold on there now. You know, and we listen to the Shastra, which describes what you're saying is invisible, like the mind, the intelligence, the false ego, and the soul. So the Shastra gives us information about that, and then we act on that information, because it's given by pure beings, the spiritual master coming from Krishna. Krishna intervenes in the world and says, this is the way things are. Now this is what you do about it. And then he says to Arjuna, now this is the information, now you can do as you want, because it's a voluntary thing. Now, when we might say, well, I want to go back to Godhead, because Krishna's have to tell me, so I want to go. But the next minute I'm not saying you or any of us here, but you find yourself down the pub, yeah, that was a bit difficult to follow that, that would be an Irish example, I don't know what an equivalent example would be. But, you're doing something which is contrary because of the accumulation of the effects of our karma. We might think that, it's easy, I believe in God, everything's fine. And you often find people make that big mistake to say, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Christian, my family are all that. And no, that's fine. That's the biggest misconception, because you're not any of those things. You're the accumulation of your karma. You might be a Hindu this life, you might be a Muslim in your next life, you might be a Christian, you might be an atheist. It's the accumulation of all the things that are going on there. You're not saved by being nominally one religion or another religion. You're not. So what it is that you need to find out what the philosophy, what the technology is, and then put it into practice. Just like all these computers are there, and you have so many computer technicians and software, hardware designers, all of this, they're all designing this thing. But God designed this particular thing, and it's massively more incredibly complex. And but we are still in our continuing in our situation. We're still how do you call it? We have the ability to tune into this, and any amount of material qualification cannot tune into this. There has to be a spiritual qualification to do that, and that's what Bhagavad Gita is teaching. That's why this is the highest school of technology in Dublin. Govinda's on the top floor, and it's just because the information here is the highest, or it's or Bhakti Yoga if it's found in other spiritual systems. It's not sectarian, but this is a science. It's not it's not some type of religion. I'm a member of this religion or that. It's not that at all. In fact, that tends to be a problem, because people, they identify it's a kind of a bodily thing again. So don't forget, it's a science. So tune into the science. It's incredible, and you can put it into practice. You can see, does it work, and you'll find that it works. It's slow. I'm not going to say that overnight. You will experience something powerful, but it does take a bit of time. You just have to practice. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Prabhupada ki. You don't want to know? I don't know. Okay. No. Okay. Hare Krishna. Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Vachani, Nirvishesha Sanyavadi Vischitana Vichitana. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Bhuni Tanana, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasana Gauravani. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare So we continue.
Dad, why did you change the key? Is it off, is it?
No, it's fine.
Is
It's, I just did it so I could play that particular tune at the start.
I didn't see. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, quick. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Panchatattva ki, Hare Govinda ki, Hare ki.
My turn?
That's it. Yes.
Okay. But you know you play. Play for Krishna's pleasure. Hari Hari. Hare Krishna. Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimat Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshakarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Rama Hare Rama Hare Rama Eva Kevalam Kalo Naste 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 Vagati Yatha Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Hare
Hare